Hello, YouTubers and fellow tankers. I am Shrine King, and welcome to King's Court. Today, we're going to do a review on the new revised Super Pershing, which is a Tier 8 Premium medium tank of the Americans. Now, those that do not know or are new, welcome. Those are returning, welcome back. Now what we do here is we do kind of like a review slash guide. So I'll be covering what are the pros and cons of the tank, how to best play the tank, different strategies to the tank. Plus, also I'm going to try to get into like knowing weaknesses to the tank, along with that, getting into how to combat the tank, and then also how to identify who's your biggest threats in your tank, and then trying to hopefully either avoid them or know what to do and to counter them as best as you can. So right out here, I always do like an intro and I kind of cover some of the details for the tank, which is something I'm trying to do now. So you'll see here that the damage is actually pretty good. The penetration is pretty good at 202. And you'll notice it has -10 to gun depression, along with a really nice aim time of 216. That's 2.16, right? So about 2 seconds. And then 0.36 is actually really good on dispersion. It means it's pretty accurate. It can definitely snipe. Now you'll see I'm pointing out angling on the armor. Also, I'm making sure to point out the spacing here, so that you'll see that there's actually normal armor and then there's spaced armor on top of that, and that the spaced armor's got amazing angling on it. And then you have the portion there where it's covering like the mantlet, and then the side, which still has good angling. And you'll see I'm pointing out those cheeks there. That's actually a weak point to the tank. So if you are struggling trying to fight it, the turret armor is only like 101 or something like that. So if you're able to get exposure to those cheeks, it's actually really good. But if you're trying to shoot through the spaced armor, yeah, it's going to be pretty rough. It actually about the equivalent of like 200 millimeters of armor. So a lot of tanks actually do struggle with that. Not only that, but it also has a really good chance of deflection. Whereas the hull, now the hull is the funny part. So the hull is already like 100 with spacing, with angling makes it about 150 to 160 millimeters. But then based on the spaced armor, that actually tacks on like another 20 to 30. But then on top of that, with the angling that goes into it, becomes like 40 to 50. So it's actually well over 200 millimeter when you're trying to pen that. But you'll see that I was kind of pointing out, like if it was angled in a certain way, you can actually shoot right into the tracks, and that will allow you to track it, plus also damage it. So now that I've kind of given away a lot of the gist of how to fight it, and also kind of showed it and noted some of the statistics to it, let's talk about those pros. We'll start there. So the pro is obviously that the gun is very accurate, very quick to the fire. So like you see, I have 6.7 second reload. And your turret traverse is actually really quick as well, which is pretty typical of most of the American tanks. On top of that, for a medium tank, you're able to get up to speed relatively quickly. I think that's something they actually kind of modified here with the revision. And then the other part there is that they added more millimeter armor onto the tank in certain sections that weren't necessarily there before. So that's part of the revision to the tank. So it used to be that there's these like two little barrel things on top of the turret. That was actually a very significant weak spot. It is no longer such so. So if that's what you're trying to aim for, I wouldn't really recommend that anymore, because it is like 200 millimeter armor there. Now, I do believe I've done a video for this tank before it was revised. So if you're looking into that, or if you've already seen it, you'll probably already be very familiar with pros and cons. But I think when I made those videos then, I didn't really cover like how to best play the tank, along with how to play it against tanks that are going to be strong against you, and then also identify which tanks are strong against you. So, for those that this is new to, other pros to the tank is that the angling is really wonderful, right? It allows you to kind of side scrape like this, where I'm kind of exposing a bit, but you want to be very, very careful about what you're exposing. So as you roll too far forward, if the enemy is looking at you, bear in mind you'll most likely shoot that spot I mentioned where the tracks. So you'll see here, I made sure to wait a little bit before pushing forward, let him fire, and that way he's actually going to shoot onto the front, where it's perfect perfect angling to give me the maximum amount of armor. And that's typically what you're going to be trying to do in those kind of scenarios. Now, other pros to the tank is actually 4 medium at the tier. It's got really good health. Now let's talk about some of the cons. Well, its traverse speed on its haul is pretty like horrible. The other side there is that its weight makes it very hard to try to get up hills with the motor that it has. So those are things that are a little difficult. One thing I didn't mention before, and I do want to mention it now, is you'll see here, like I'm continuously moving and able to, like I don't even have to bother trying to aim very much. I can, the dispersion and while on the move is really not that bad, and that allows, it's a very key point to this. Now, if I get into like a con here, one of the cons to the tank is actually its view range. It doesn't have very good view range. It has okay camo, but not very great camo. But because of the view range, you would think like, oh man, that's going to be rough. But the truth is, this tank can be such an aggressor that you don't really need a lot of view range. So, modules I would recommend, especially as today's playstyle. So like what I'm seeing is artillery is a huge threat. So you probably want to run your small line. You're also going to want to use your, like you can choose to use binocs. I personally, with coated optics, I like to stay on the move. And then you have multiple choices of what you want for the third item. So the third item can actually be a gun rammer, although like I said, your reload speed's already pretty good. I don't know if you really need it. But that's entirely up to you. Change it to where the aiming, right, will actually be reduced. So, and I forget the one for that, but it's the one that either makes it to where as you turn your turret or while you're on the move, it reduces the amount of movement there. And that makes it to where you can continue to push and fire on the move with this tank. You can always choose the other one to make it where you aim fast, but like I mentioned, your aim time is already really low, so I don't think you really want to run that. Now, honestly, that's about it for most of the cons of the tank. We've kind of covered a lot of the pros. So let's talk about how to best play the tank. So you'll see here with the gun depression and stuff like that, you definitely want to use hills to your advantage. So you'll see here even this little ridging, I'm using that to my advantage to make it to where it's very hard to penetrate my tank. And here I'm like, okay, well I know that the gun is pretty accurate, so I'm making sure to aim, but I'm also trying to pay attention to timers from all of my opponents here, such as this Pershing, because of that, right? Like that would be a serious hit on me. So I'm trying to make sure that he doesn't get an opportunity to shoot me like that. Now, what are the things that you need to watch out for? What are the tanks that you need to watch out for? Well, obviously all artillery is your main, right? As now, that said, it used to be that this tank was a lot slower, so you want to keep this tank pretty mobile. And that's your way of trying to combat against those artillery players. That said, there are quite a few tanks. Now, for those that don't know, this is a preferential tank, which means when you go into matchmaking, you will not see higher than one tier higher than you. That means the maximum match tiering that you can have in this tank is 9. And that's really nice to have. But, to be honest, that was also set up back in the day when a lot of the tanks were very well balanced, in my opinion. There were some tanks that were poorly balanced, and actually, funny enough, a lot of them still have not been rebalanced, so I really wish that they would balance them even more. Now, you'll see here where I was coming over the ridge, I want to note to you, if you're running into a Super Pershing, the lower glacis plate is still the weakest spot in the front, besides that little machine gun port. Now, that said, to try to hit that lower glacis, when I'm coming over the ridge, there is a part where the space armor is actually ended, so you can technically get a shot right into the belly of the tank, and that's actually your best spot to try to hit it. But don't, even if you can't seem to get the shot, take your shot, because what happened there is that IKB actually waited until I had already approached over, so then the top plate came down, and there was no way he was going to pen that against me. Now, getting into the tanks that you need to watch out for, along with kind of identifying how things are now, there are a lot of tier 8, tier 9 tanks that have been released since this tank was created that causes significant problems for this tank. And the reason being is that they have such high penetration rating. And some of them even have where they're using APCR rounds as their normal ammo, which, by the way, if you didn't know, APCR actually has better chances of normalizing on a shot, which means even if it doesn't hit the best angling, it still has opportunity to normalize anyway and still try to penetrate and get the majority of its penetration rating, which makes it a little more, let's just say a little more problematic, right? Oh, and I apologize. Apparently, I forgot to cut that part out of the video. So yeah, you get to see me queue up in another tank, although it's going to go right into another video of the Super Pershing. But it gives me some time to talk about this. So, tanks that I'm talking about. So for example, the Defender was released, and that one actually has really good penetration and is a heavy, which means it's going to be very difficult for you to fight against it. If you are fighting against it, you want to use premium. And then bear in mind that there's still a lot of exposure points on your tank that it's going to be very problematic to try to fight against it. Can Panzer 105 is a new one that was released. That one will actually penetrate you most often. So if you see some shots from that, you actually want to get out of the area. So don't stay there and fight it. 50 TP is kind of like iffy. The problem with the 50 TP is actually that when he does penetrate you, it's going to hurt really, really bad. Now the nice bit is that because of the space armor on this tank, high explosives don't do any good against it if you're hitting the spaced armor. So heat users, if you see someone's trying to use heat against you, those are the ones that you want to bully, right? Because they're not really going to have a good opportunity to hit you. They got to try to hit spots that are actually bare, and that's not necessarily always as easy to do. So other things to kind of watch out for is really any tier 9 tank that you know that's going to have a really solid gun. So for example, like the Leopard PTA actually has like 230 or 240 penetration. So really anything that's over like 220 on the penetration is really going to be kind of scary. And that's why the Can Panzer is actually a big one, right? Because it's actually like 250 or 268 or something like that on its normal ammo. And its normal ammo is APCR, which makes it extremely dangerous. Other tank destroyers, specifically at the tier that's higher, so for example like the T-30, if it's got the big gun, absolutely be very wary of it. That thing will hurt you really bad. So you'll see there, like, even the P-43 Biz, the T-21, like all of, like HT number 4 or 6, all of those have trouble trying to hit me. And all of their guns aren't really going to have a good opportunity or chance to really pen through me. So these are the ones that are, like, this is actually prime for me. Now, the list really kind of goes on with the tanks that we want to be very wary of. But like I said, the real gist is you know what kind of penetration that you're looking at. So like for example, the SU-122-44, I don't need to worry about that one because that one only has 175 penetration, and then if it runs premium ammo, it gets up to like 220 or something. So only when it's using its premium ammo is it like something really to be feared. But other than that, not really. Now that said though, the Wizzy line, that's actually what I call it, the line, it's the Chinese tank destroyer lines. They are well known for their higher penetration. The same thing goes with all of the Swedish lines. So the Swedish ones you want to be very careful with as well. So if you see that there's a stirb and things like that, those are the ones that you definitely want to be very careful about because they are really, really strong against this tank. Even with all the recommendations I mentioned, like I said, view range is actually one of the harder parts, and you would actually have to get your view range past the maximum to try to start combating their camo. And those tanks already have extremely high camo. They're almost always far back hidden. So if you start taking hits for those, you need to get away from that area. Call out to your artillery if you can. If you, well, hopefully don't pay attention to where there's most likely a stirb at. Or if there's other heavies or flanking tanks or even lights that maybe can try to get out there to go spot for you, that would be also very beneficial. Now, you'll see that my crew is pretty well hurt. This is one of the other reasons why I highly recommend using a small liner. It's because it helps reduce that. Also, if you can get skills eventually, that would also benefit you. But you're most likely using skills or getting skills into this tank that's more for your medium crew in the American line, or most likely going for the Patton line. So yeah, that might be not necessarily one of the first 3 or 4 that you want to get, but maybe like 5 or 6 to start getting stuff towards that. Now, let's see, what else would you really be worried about? I'm trying to think of like other tanks to really call out and to be very wary of. Now, you'll see that the way that I'm playing, so just a side conversation here, is the way that I'm playing is I'm not being overly aggressive. It is open field, so I want to be kind of careful. And like I mentioned, this thing can snipe, so that's why you're seeing I am here. I notice my team's going to get there well before I can. So I'm taking the time to slow down and snipe out as best as I can. Now, this thing does also have an APCR, so there's a couple things that you really would want to know for the APCR. APCR travel velocity of the shell is actually really good. Always normally higher than AP rounds. So, in the event you're firing very at long distance, and you also got to bear in mind that your shell penetration drops significantly based on distance. So you want to, if certain targets are decently armored, it's probably best to switch to your APCR, and it'll get the shell there faster. The other thing too is if you want to be really cheap, is you would use that in the event that you're trying to snipe out a kill, to make sure you at least get some damage before the target's killed. This is more important towards like certain missions that you'll be working on and stuff like that. So, the other thing to bear in mind is if the enemy tank is very accurate. So the reason being is if they can snipe you, those are the ones that would be a little dangerous because they're probably going to aim for your cupola, they're going to aim for like your cheeks, they're going to aim for the gun port, you know, anything that they can to help try to penetrate through you. Now, one thing I will tell you, a good way to trick people is they tend to try to aim for your cheeks. If you wiggle your turret, literally just like maybe 3 or 5 degrees, just little by little, to the left and the right, it actually usually tricks them. Or I shouldn't say tricks them, it normally causes a conflict because where they're aiming and where they're trying to hit, one of two things. Either they're going to wait and try to make sure that they're getting a good shot in, or they're going to pull the trigger on it, and while the shell is coming at you, the rotation of your wiggle will actually most likely make it hit spaced armor. And not only that, but most likely at an angle that's just going to be either impossible or not very likely to penetrate. So that's usually a good tip to do. The other thing too is if you see people are aiming at your hull a lot and they're kind of doing the same thing, they're kind of pointing out or figuring out certain spots that they can aim at, you can do the same thing. You just wiggle like 2 to 3 degrees. Now that might get a little tricky trying to wiggle your turret and your hull at the same time, 2 to 3 degrees. So bear that in mind. But that's just the gist. If I had to tell you, like, do I think this tank is worth it? I think it's absolutely a monster now. With the updates and stuff like that, the revision has made it just. I already thought it was a good performance tank. It is now an exceptional performance tank. But like I said, there are certain tanks you definitely want to be careful of. But as long as you're not running into those tanks, and as long as you're playing around those tanks, it tends to go really, really good. Here I'm just showing you that I didn't really boost a lot to the crew. You'll notice that I'm not even using some of the stuff that I recommended. I just already had this stuff on the tank because I've had it for so long. There are definitely things that you would want to do, and like I said, spall liner is probably a big one, especially in today's day because everyone seems to be running high explosives quite often. Anyway, like I said, I hope you guys really enjoy this stuff, and this tank is definitely worth it. Hope to catch you on the next video, and hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe, let me know what you think.